The views and opinions expressed on this podcast is solely of the creator and may not necessarily reflect the views, thoughts, or opinions of the listener. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to Under the Moon Paranormal Presents Ohio Legends, the podcast about the Buckeye State and the strange, weird, and out-of-this-world phenomena that goes on in and around the Buckeye State, Ohio. I am your host, Melanie, and this episode is brought to you by August 28th full moon, known as the Sturgeon Moon. Every full moon has its own story. Some are linked with harvests, while others flowers, while others carry names inspired by nature. The August full moon, popularly known as the Sturgeon Moon, is one of the most fascinating full moons of the year. Unlike regular lunar events, this full moon reminds us that growth isn't always loud. Sometimes the biggest transformations happen quietly through patience, reflection, and letting life unfold at its own pace. Whether you enjoy moon gazing, follow astrology, or simply love learning about celestial events, the full Sturgeon Moon offers an opportunity to slow down and reconnect with yourself. In this full moon, it will be in the night sky August 28th, 2026. This moon appears when the moon sits directly opposite of the sun, and it's going to be a partial lunar eclipse for Ohio on the 28th. So do some moon meditation, gratitude journaling under the moonlight, manifestation rituals, charging crystals, energy cleansing, and setting intentions for the coming. Write down what you're already ready to release. List habits, fears, negative thoughts that no longer support your journey. Practice gratitude. Write 5 things that you're genuinely grateful for. Gratitude helps shift your focus toward abundance. Cleanse your space. Decluttering your surroundings often helps clear the mental clutter too. So reflect instead of reacting. Full moons amplify emotions, so give yourself time before making any major decision. And that is your full moon report. Okay, so strange news time. This month we are covering haunted Vinton County, Ohio. So naturally I have to talk about some strange things going on in Ohio regarding underage girls getting married across the border in West Virginia and having a bunch of kids with some people that they probably shouldn't have been with when they were such a young age, like 13, 15. Under 18, you should not be getting married. So, you heard the Siders case, 16 children found in Hamden, Ohio. Here's what we know, and here's what the internet got wrong. So you cannot believe everything you read on the internet, especially when it comes to things like this. Okay, 16 children found in Hamden County. Alright. So, on the morning of June 30th, 2026, Vinton County Sheriff's Department drove down to a wood-framed house in Almer Street in the village of Hamden, Ohio. They were serving a warrant, okay? They weren't there for a wellness check. The warrant had nothing to do with the children, nothing to do with welfare checks, nothing to do with 16 human beings that they were about to find inside the house. So, the Attorney General, Andy Wilson, would say later that when they went through that door, they did not know there would be 16 kids there. Nobody knew. So, there's a bunch of kids inside this house. Investigators say that largely kept into a single room of about 12 feet by 12 feet, and that they had spent most of the past 4 years in this one room. One of them split 16 ways. Everything was in that tiny room, split 16 ways. According to the Vinton County property records, the house itself runs 1,336 square feet, 5 rooms, 1 bathroom, with another 118 feet of basement beneath it, and 20 people were living inside this tiny house. Okay, so 7 of the children were taken to hospitals. 2 of them were flown by helicopter to trauma centers in Columbus, and 1 was placed in intensive care in critical condition. Some of them could not speak, and the eldest was 18 years old and could not write her own name. Wilson described them as looking almost like feral human beings and said it was terrible. Nobody had dialed 911. No one reported a missing child or a child in distress or anything at that kind of nature. All the children were found because deputies came to the door on an unrelated matter and went inside. So why did they knock on the door to this house of horrors? For days, officials would not say. Wilson did say that perhaps 1 month or 6 weeks ago, that it was not about the welfare of the 16 kids. The criminal complaint in Vinton County was for the father of the 16 kids, Gary Siders Jr., for public indecency. Red flag right there. And this was not the first time that he was charged for public indecency. It's happened multiple times before they actually went to his house and investigated 4 different counts of public indecency. So it was all on May 23rd, May 27th, May 29th, and May 31st. So I don't know if that was some kind of call for help for him to get the ball running to get his kids taken care of properly. Don't know. Or was he trying to expose himself to another woman? Who knows? That's not really clear. But anyway, don't believe everything you read on the internet. This woman, the mother, she was married 2008 in Mason County, West Virginia. He was 18 and she was 15. That is true. They didn't need her parents' consent because they went across the border to West Virginia. The poor girl, I think, couldn't really speak up for herself, because if you see in the mugshot, she looks like she was rescued too. So there has to be something done with people marrying little girls and just using them as a source to breed and get welfare. That's my opinion there. So that was your strange Ohio news article. It was a bit of a doozy this month. It's just really important for me to say that there has to be something done with 15-year-olds getting pregnant and married to 18-year-olds. Okay, so like I said, this episode is going to be a cluster episode about Vinton County, Ohio. But first, let's take a break for our sponsor, Four Sigmatic Mushroom Coffee.
Functional mushroom extracts like lion's mane and chaga to provide steady energy and focus with less caffeine and fewer jitters than traditional coffee. Functional fungi infused with mushrooms fruiting body extracts like lion's manes for focus and chaga for immunity, antioxidants. Flavor profiles, the taste of like regular dark roast coffee with chocolate notes, not like mushrooms. Different levels of caffeine, lower caffeine, standard caffeine, and mushroom acts as adaptogens to help smooth out the energy spikes and prevent afternoon crashes. Try Four Sigmatic Mushroom Coffee today. Click on my link for 20% off.
And if you're local to Greenfield, Ohio, November 7th, 2026, that's the first Saturday of November, $15 per entry, doors open at noon. The Chug Fest of the Church of Heavy Metal Underground's first annual festival comes to Greenfield from Larva Promotions at Watt Road, Greenfield, Ohio. 7 amazing bands featuring Portray the Broken, and I'll be there giving out tarot readings, pendulum readings, and palm readings. Doors open at noon. Come see me at my table. Look for the banister up here. Look for the Under the Moon flag. So yeah, November 7th, doors open at noon, $15 per person. All right. So the first location in Vinton County that we're going to talk about is going to be Hope Iron Furnace. What I have learned in studying this book back here, I don't know if you can see it. Let me grab it here. This book here. Vinton County is practically a ghost town. There's not a lot of population. There are 3 major wildlife and forest preserves. You got the Wayne Forest, the Zaleski State Forest, and Hocking Hills all surround this place, or close to it. It's within traveling distance. So it was a booming area in the late mid-1800s for coal miners, furnaces. The railroad tracks ran through, and now they don't no more. Like Moonville Tunnel is here also in Vinton County. Go back to one of our older episodes where we just talked about Moonville Tunnel and its ghost. So we're going to add to this little section here about Vinton County. It's basically a ghost town wherever you go. So we're going to talk about a few hot spots, and then we'll wrap it up and then go into our listener submitted stories. So here is the history on Hope Furnace. It is a historic blast furnace in the southeastern part of the U.S. state of Ohio, located along State Route 278, approximately 5 miles northeast of the village of Zaleski. It is one of 2 extant iron furnaces in Vinton County. Between 1854 and 1874, the furnace was used to smelt iron ore using coal or charcoal for fuel. It is a rectangular structure built out of sandstone and shaped like a pyramid. Like many other iron furnaces in southeastern Ohio, because there was a lot of coal furnaces around that are no longer working. Like we're supposed to be moving past burning coal. The Hope Furnace was surrounded by a community of at least 300 residents at its height, okay? The production of iron and the supply of the materials required for iron smelting required a large number of workers, and during a furnace's year of operation, it was the center of a temporary community. No buildings from the community remain to this day. When the furnace closed, the workers disappeared. And the buildings collapsed or were demolished, or nature took over. Although the buildings are gone, many artifacts still remain in the soil surrounding the furnace. The most significant are many pieces of slag that litter the ground. Today, Hope Furnace is part of Lake Hope State Park because of its importance of the local history. The furnace was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1973. And it was the second place in Vinton County to be added to the register. So that's Hope Furnace's history. Let's talk about the ghost stories, because this whole county haunted. It is like the biggest section of this book is Vinton County. So here's the ghost story of Hope Furnace. The watchman, it was a particularly rainy and stormy night. While walking along the platform with his lantern, he slipped in the darkness and fell into the bubbling ore inside the furnace. Yikes. Another version has the man being frightened by a bolt of lightning causing him to fall. But perhaps the best known version of the story, and the most romanticized, has the worker battling his way through a fierce storm in order to make his rounds. The watchman refused to be kept from his rounds, and he wouldn't wait for impending storm to pass over. As he made his rounds, lightning flashed around him, creeping closer with each strike. And as the story goes, the watchman was finally struck by a bolt of lightning and then fell into the furnace. While it is impossible to determine if the man was killed by the bolt of lightning or the fall, all concerning agree that not even death has been able to keep this watchman from making his rounds. It is said that on particularly stormy nights, the ghostly watchman returns to make his rounds. There have been dozens of reports of a dark figure carrying a lantern walking along the top of the Hope Furnace, which is the only thing practically still standing in this area. Some have said that the figure continues pacing back and forth across the furnace until lightning strikes close by, which causes the figure to disappear until the next stormy night. Interesting. So the paranormal claims are the apparition of a night watchman carrying a lantern has been reported seen during storms. Investigators have recorded EVPs around the area of the furnace. That was Hope Furnace. The next one on our Vinton County haunted stories is Beard's Cemetery in Dundas, Ohio. Beard Cemetery, located in Dundas, Ohio, is one of the area's most talked about haunted sites. Local legends and paranormal reports describe eerie encounters that have become a part of its spooky reputation. Multiple witnesses have claimed seeing glowing gray stones in the cemetery, often described as pulsating or emanating some sort of soft light. Alongside these are accounts of a dog with glowing red eyes and vicious teeth roaming the grounds. Some stories add that the dog may be a spectral hellhound or ghastly companion to a Civil War soldier's grave. So the hauntings are the Civil War ghost. One legend ties the glowing stones to the ghost of a soldier who is said to hover near his resting place. The hellhound, the red-eyed dog, is often linked to the maleficent guardian spirit, possibly tied to the soldier's fate or the cemetery's dark history, which I couldn't find no dark history on it. Light phenomena. Visitors report seeing lights in the cemetery at night, which may be connected to the glowing stones or other paranormal activity. Okay, so I have to have a disclaimer here. While these stories are a part of local lore and paranormal interest, Beard Cemetery is a private property cemetery. The Ohio Exploration Society and HauntTracker emphasize that trespassing is not condoned and visitors should seek permission before entering. So if you're experienced and interested in the tours of the haunted history, I'm going to put the HauntTracker's website in so you can book your own investigation of that cemetery. So that was the story of Beard's Cemetery. The next haunted site in Vinton County we're going to talk about is the Stairway House. The Stairway House is located on North Broadway in Zaleski, Ohio, and is locally reputed haunted property with a rich and eerie history. So according to a long-standing local tradition, the distinctive stairway in the house was taken from the Zaleski Castle, built in 1850s for Peter Zaleski, a Polish count who helped finance the Marietta and Cincinnati Railroad. So that railroad ran through Moonville Tunnel. Despite his name being given to the town, Peter Zaleski never actually visited Zaleski, Ohio. When the castle fell into ruin, its furnishes and woodwork were salvaged and incorporated into other local homes, including the Stairway House. While the Stairway House is not one of Ohio's most famous paranormal sites, it is listed among Vinton County's haunted locations. The haunting is tied to the castle's history and mysterious fate of its furnishings. Visitors and locals have reported an unsettling presence, possibly linked to the castle's past, and the strange way its elements ended up in the house. So, the Stairway House is part of Zaleski's broader haunted heritage, which includes other notable sites like Moonville Tunnel and Hope Furnace. These locations often feature ghostly figures, moving objects, eerie sounds, and the popular are among the paranormal enthusiasts. Note, private property, once again, you have to seek to visit properly. So that was the Stairway House. Okay, so we did an episode a while ago about all of Ohio's crybaby bridges. There are a ton of crybaby bridges in Ohio alone, okay? There's over 30 of them. But a Crying Creek Baby? Yes, Crying Creek Baby is a local Everett legend tied to an incident in Zaleski State Forest. Part of the broader Crybaby Bridge folklore that has spread across America. These stories typically involve a tragic event, often the death of a baby, and the haunting sounds of cries heard or near a creek or a bridge, or the mom looking for the baby, that kind of thing. So in this version, the tale centers on the bridge or crossing over the creek in Zaleski State Forest. The legend claims that a mother in distress threw her baby into the water below. The baby drowned, and the mother, heartbroken, is said to still search for her child, crying out in agony. Locals report at night travelers can hear the wails of a baby echoing in the forest, sometimes accompanied by its mother's cries. So this fits the classic crybaby bridge pattern. The bridge or crossing over a creek. In this case, it's Zaleski State Forest's creek. The baby whose death is central to the story, and the mother who is blamed for the child's demise, often due to hardship, unwanted circumstances, or an inability to care for the child. While there is no verified historical record of this exact event in Zaleski State Forest, the legend persists as part of Everett's local ghost stories. So it shares similarities with other crybaby bridge sites such as in Salem, Ohio Bridge, or the Monmouth, Illinois Bridge. There were similar backstories of infanticide or drowning that have been passed down for generations. Like I said in the episode about the Ohio crybaby bridges, it was a scare out of teen pregnancy. It was warning people. So if you ever visit the Zaleski State Forest, particularly near the creek crossing, you may hear the local version of the tale being told by residents, or you may even hear a baby crying yourself. Watch out. Alright. So just a little ways down from Moonville Tunnel is Kings Hollow Tunnel. Alright. This one, it's an easy hike because you have to hike pretty much to get to Moonville and this tunnel. So this is in Zaleski State Forest, about 1 mile round trip to the tunnel, mostly flat, 30 to 60 minutes, easy year-round, dogs welcome on a leash. So if you're into hiking and you're going to Zaleski State Forest and check out Moonville Tunnel, make sure you check out the Kings Hollow Tunnel too, because I hear it's a lot more spookier. So there's an abandoned railroad tunnel hidden in the woods of Zaleski State Forest. Cut straight through the sandstone cliff in line with timbers that have been standing for more than 150 years. Its famous cousin, the Moonville Tunnel, gets all the ghost stories and all the visitors. But the Kings Hollow Tunnel sits quietly just a few miles away, just as eerie and a fraction as crowded. If you want a short, strange, history-soaked walk through Southeast Ohio, this is the one for ya. Kings Hollow is the kind of place that rewards a little curiosity. The hike itself is easy, quick, and if you're walking through the bones of a vanished town and the railroad that hauled iron and coal out of these hills a century and a half ago. The tunnel sits in Zaleski State Forest in Vinton County near the village of Zaleski and not far from Lake Hope State Park, which is where the Hope Furnace is. The common access point to this gravel intersection of Kings Hollow Trail and Rock Camp Road deep in the forest. The old Moonville rail line, now hiking trail, crosses a rock camp road just south of that intersection. Park along the gravel shoulder near the intersection, find the old rail bed where it crosses the road, and follow it east. It's roughly half a mile to the tunnel, which takes about a mile total. There is no cell service out here. It's unreliable, so download your map or print directions before you leave pavement. Okay, so a lot of these roads out here in Moonville area are gravel and they're very small, so you have to take them slow. Do not speed. Do not think you're gonna, pass somebody. It's tiny out there, so be careful when you're driving through these tunnels. The route follows the old Moonville rail grade, so the walking is flat and straightforward. The way the railroad beds always are, the surface is rustic and not manufactured park trail. Expect uneven footing and occasional overgrowth stretches, and a small creek crossing or two depending on the season. Sturdy shoes are smart. The trail climbs a small hill to the left, and then the tunnel comes into view. So it's cut through a cliff face. When you see it, you'll know. Kings Hollow Tunnel runs about 120 feet and is lined the whole way with heavy timber framing. It's boarded in wood. It's kind of amazing. The interior is dark, quiet, and unusually holds shallow pools of standing water on the floor. Bring a flashlight or use your phone's light, both to see the timber and work your way to keep footing on the wet ground. The light catches the old beams and the rough rock at the entrance in a way that is genuinely worth the short trip. If you want a longer day, the Moonville Trail runs about 10 miles total and connects a string of historic sites, okay? You got Zaleski, the ghost town of Mineral, and the far more famous Moonville Tunnel, the haunted centerpiece of the corridor. You can stitch the Kings Hollow and Moonville together into a multi-mile out and back if your legs are up for it. So Mineral, Moonville, and Hope were all working towns during Ohio's 19th century iron and coal boom. Strung together by the Moonville rail line that carried freight from the iron furnace at Hope, the line came through in the late 1850s when Marietta and Cincinnati Railroad pushed into the region, and it later became part of Baltimore and Ohio systems. Kings Hollow grew out of the small stop once known as Kings Station, a depot and shipping point that moved coal, timber, and iron ore out of the hills, and the King name most likely came from local land-owning family, a common name habit in rural Ohio at the time. They were all kind of named after the people that founded the towns. As times played out and the iron industry declined in the early 1900s, the town shrank and was eventually abandoned. The formal station design faded from the maps, and locals started calling the area by its geography instead, a hollow. In Appalachian usage, it is a simply small valley between hills. Today, little remains besides old rail grades, scattered foundations, and the tunnel, and a lot of history. The tunnel itself goes by several names depending on who you ask: Kings Hollow Tunnel, Kings Switch Tunnel, and Mineral Tunnel, and just Kings Tunnel. They're all the same timber-lined passage through that cliff. Let's get into the ghost stories, shall we? So, the most abandoned railroad structures in southeastern Ohio, the Kings Hollow has collected its share of legends. Take them for what they're worth, though. They're campfire folklore, not history. The Phantom Train. On foggy nights, people claim to hear a train rumbling through the tunnel and to glimpse a faint headlamp inside, even though no tracks remain. The sound carrying through the hills from a distant rail line is an unusual explanation. What you think about that, huh? The railroad worker's spirit. A worker is said to have died during construction to appear as a shadowy figure near the entrance. There were no verified records of a fatal incident at this exact tunnel. The story survives by word of mouth. The vanishing light, just like Moonville, and the Hope Furnace. Teenagers have long told of a floating lantern light, flashlights flickering, and phone batteries draining near the center of the tunnel. Moisture drafts or cold air pockets are most likely the heavy lifters here. That's up to you. If you see a lantern light, if you think it's paranormal, it's paranormal. Go by what your body says the most, okay? Trust your instincts. So why does it feel creepy? A dense Appalachian forest is the isolation, the cold air that pulls inside the tunnel, and the way the stone amplifies and distorts every sound. An abandoned tunnel deep in the woods does a lot of work on its own. That's actually pretty true. I bet they make all kinds of creepy noises when you're in there. So here's a few tips if you're going to be hiking to any of these tunnels in the ghost towns of the old miner towns. Bring a light. Tunnels are dark. Floors are wet. You need to see where you're going. Shoes. You need to wear good shoes. They can be muddy, overgrown. The bed is rough. You know, go in the winter or fall for sure for the best atmosphere and the fewest bugs and snakes. Summer brings humidity, mosquitoes, because the standing water inside the tunnels breeds mosquitoes. Respect the site. The timbers are historic and fragile. Look, photograph, and leave as you found it. Don't leave any trace of humans behind. Okay, so yeah, that is the story of King's Hollow or King Station. So yeah, kind of spooky. I would be spooked out if I go there and see a snake. I'd rather go in the wintertime. I really would. I really would. Alright, so yeah. So what do you think about when you think about Ohio? It's one of the greatest cities like Cincinnati, Columbus, or Cleveland. It could be one of the hometown sports teams like the Reds or the Bengals or the Browns or the Cavaliers. How about one of our educational facilities like OSU or Kent State? At least we forget the attractions like Kings Island or Cedars Point or the various zoos and museums. With that being said though, have you ever wondered about the last thing people would think about? After doing exactly this, you have to think about the ghost towns and the histories that were left behind that are now state forest parks. As far as counties go, Vinton County is currently the least populous county in Ohio, with 12,800 people calling it home according to the last census. Vinton County barely beat out other counties like Monroe, that has 13,000, or Morgan County, that has 13,500. For that bottom slot, the largest town in Vinton County is MacArthur, population 1783. So the most populated city in Ohio is Columbus at 914,000 people, not including the suburbs. So a quick look at a map will show you that there isn't much to do in or around Vinton County. And to be fair, there isn't much in nearby counties either, just a lot of ghosts and history. Yet Vinton County is remembered by its history. And we talked about the Moonville Tunnel, and in this episode we talked about so many different places like Hope Furnace and King Station. But there's still more I haven't even mentioned. If you want me to do another episode about the ghost towns in Vinton County, there's a couple more, so let me know in the comments. So, we have 3 listener submitted stories for me to share with you for this month. Oh, I'm so excited for the first one because it takes place in Vinton County. Yes, this one was submitted by Delteco 22. I wasn't sure how to write this, but I needed the validation that I'm not insane. I've never really had a paranormal experience, but I cannot explain this. I'm in college, and me and some other 7 people from school went on a backpacking trip, and we had 2 experienced leaders. We drove to Zaleski State Forest, which is in the Appalachian region of Ohio. It was in early April this year, and it was cold, and everything was still dead from winter. After hiking miles into the forest, we set up camp at the backpacking campsite, and there were a couple of other groups of people there as well. A few of them are friendly, older couples, and then 2 college-age girls. Everyone was pretty spread out from each other, and we set up camp further away from everyone else. That's our setup. Okay. I have always been able to sense energy of places, and energy where it isn't great. It was almost spooky. Each of us had an individual 1-person tents, and we formed a kind of cluster in a camp in this site, with my tent being in the back, so no one was behind me. Our cluster was also right next to the forest because its backpacking site was like a big cleared off square in the middle of the trees. Fast forward, I'm dead asleep around 2 a.m. I wake up to leaves crunching right behind my tent. I hear footsteps walking in circles around my tent, and then had a sort of heaviness to them that I couldn't place that it was a deer or a dog. it also sounded like it was 2 legs and not 4. I cannot make this up. This creature was circling my tent for long periods of time, slowly creeping up to the sides of my tent and then just stopping for periods of time. Then it would move on to walking around the rest of our tent cluster. I could hear human-like breathing from the mouth when it was close to my tent, and it was sort of heaving. I was shaking, too scared to unzip my tent and investigate. I kid you not, this occurred for hours, and it seemed like I was the only one awake. Out of nowhere, I see an illuminated light shape from my tent, although I couldn't tell what it was from inside my tent, because it was all zipped up. It was like a warm glow, and it didn't move, like a flashlight would. I was paralyzed in fear. I simply couldn't believe it was an animal. At some point, I fell asleep due to sheer exhaustion. But I could hear the heavy footsteps circling until I eventually fell asleep. I'm getting goosebumps listening to this. In the morning, I questioned my fellow campers about it, and my leader admitted that she heard the footsteps and noises as well, admitting it was bizarre, and she would have investigated if she had not been so groggy. Maybe she was scared and not groggy. One of the boys in the group said that he also noticed the light that came on, but thought it was someone else. Not a single person in the group went up to go to the bathroom or turned on a light that night. I've heard things about the Appalachian region being creepy and bizarre, but now I believe it. Some people have leaned towards Bigfoot because apparently he is associated with light orbs. Never been a Bigfoot believer, but I'm telling you, this didn't feel like just any animal, like a bear. Now, I'm one of those people that believe that Bigfoot is an interdimensional being, so maybe the light was him blipping out of existence. Who knows? Who knows? That's spooky. And are you sure it wasn't the other campers, like the 2 girls or the older couple? I mean, I doubt it was the older couple, right? But it could have been those 2 girls. Still, that's a weird one. And if you think it was heavier than what those 2 girls were, like the footstep sounds were heavier than what you think they would sound like, then that's probably a Bigfoot. I mean, you're sleeping out in the Zaleski State Forest Park, you're gonna run into something out there. It's a ghost town. If you got a story that you want to submit to the podcast, please email me at underthemoonparapod@gmail.com. and I will read your story on the show. This next one comes from Sherry. Okay, I had an occurrence that happened to me when I was about 14 years ago. I was attending a local college at the time, living with my folks to save expenses. My parents had lived in a 1940s 50 cracker box house. It was 1.5 story with an attic and full finished basement. I slept in the attic, and it had a window at both ends of my bed. My bed was next to one of them, I had been sleeping soundly, and then I woke up suddenly. I had a small window air conditioner unit running, and because it was hot and it was a sticky night. By the light, one of the street lamps, I saw a figure of a woman standing by the side of my bed. She was backlit by the light, so I saw no facial features, but she looked as real as a 3-dimensional as you or I. She even swayed slightly from side to side, just as a person does when standing. She had curly hair, was short, and wore a housecoat. She greatly resembled my mother, who has those features. I remember wondering why my mom was standing by my bed in the middle of the night watching me sleep. So I called out, "Mom!" but there was no answer. In fact, there was no sound at all. No creaking floorboards, no sounds of breathing, nothing. I can recall the exact moment that I realized what I was looking at was not my mother. My heart gave one single great thump, and I could feel throughout my tired body, and then just came an adrenaline burst. I stared at for what seemed like an eternity before gaining the courage to tear my gaze away and turn on the bedside lamp. When I did, there was nothing there, but there was literally no time for any human being to go around my bed and walk to the stairs to make their way down in order to leave the room. There was also nowhere they could have hid in that short time it took for me to switch my light on. When I turned off the light, the figure didn't return. To this day, I have absolutely no idea who or what I saw. I know that no deaths had happened in or around the house, and I have no other incidents in it. I only know that I never felt comfortable in that room and still don't. Even when my family goes back to visit, my parents still live in that house. Okay, so when you thought it was possibly your mom and the housecoat thing, maybe your mom was astral projecting. Or a second option could be maybe it was your mom's mom or your grandma's mom. Some kind of ancestor watching over you. That's the feel I get off of it. I don't get a spooky vibe. I get familiar vibe, if you know what I'm saying. Thanks for your story. This last one is short and sweet, but if you have a story that you want to send me, email me, underthemoonparapod@gmail.com. I will read your story on the show. Okay, this one's from Sally. In 1976, my son's godmother lived in a house that was moved from a graveyard. The bathroom had 2 doors, one from the kitchen and one from her room. She was married to a horrible man that used to smack her around. This particular day, they got into a big fight and he had her by the throat in the bathroom over the tub. He squeezed so tight she was near to pass out. She felt something grab him off of her. It pushed him out of the door and locked both doors to the bathroom so he couldn't get back in. For about 10 minutes, he screamed for her to unlock the doors. He tried everything to get in, but the doors would not unlock. He finally gave up and left. As he was walking down the steps, the doors unlocked and she could get out. We truly believe the ghost of the house saved her life. I'd been there many times and always kind of felt something there, but I never really got scared. We used to see shadows, but never thought anything of it until that day. Wow. That's kind of an amazing story. Thank you for submitting that, Sally. It does sound like whoever was watching over your friend definitely did not like that piece of shit. All right. So yeah, come see me November 7th. Doors open at noon, Watt Road, Greenfield, Ohio. Link will be in the description of this show. Link to 20% off of amazing mushroom coffee from Four Sigmatic will also be in the description of the show. And until next time, stay spooky.
Under the Moon Paranormal is written, hosted, and produced by me, Melanie Peters. Check us out on YouTube. Give us a like, subscribe, and share with a friend that likes all things that are spooky. Music for this podcast was written for Under the Moon Paranormal by Bradley Yates. This podcast is 100% AI-free and human-made.